Hello, hi everyone. This is Dr. Victoria Nalule, and today I want to talk about regional energy laws and also international energy laws, the basis for these laws, why the laws are important, and also their impact and influence when it comes to the energy sector or international energy land policy. So to start with, I will share the slide. So international and regional energy law, that is the focus for today's discussion. And about me, I'm a lawyer and an expert in international energy land policy. And also I'm an author of 9 books so far. And all my books are focused on energy law, the just transition. I have a book on land extractive industries, energy transitions and the future of the African energy sector, mining and the law, and then energy poverty and access challenges in sub-Saharan Africa, international arbitration in the energy and mining sector, and so on and so forth. So my books and research, it's basically focused on international energy law, the just transition, land law and extractives, oil and gas, and also international arbitration in the energy and mining sectors. So today's focus, it's on we want to talk about international law in general and then regional energy laws, why the regional energy laws are important, what is the basis for regional energy laws, and then why international law is important, and also why regionalism in the energy sector is very important today. So we shall start with regionalism. We all know at the national level, different countries have enacted various energy laws and policies. And these laws sometimes are specific. You could find a law on renewable energy that regulates the renewable energy sector. You could find a law on the petroleum sector, that is oil and gas. So countries would have like petroleum laws and policies. And then when it comes to environmental protection, we are seeing an enaction of climate change laws at the national level. So that is at the national level. So each country enacts their own laws and regulations that will help them govern the energy sector or the energy sector in the country. But at a regional level, we are also seeing an introduction of regional energy laws. But then for us to appreciate these regional energy laws, we need to first understand what regionalism really means in the energy sector and what regionalism means in general. So by definition, regionalism can be understood as the expression of a common sense of identity and purpose combined with the creation and implementation of institutions that express a particular identity and shape collective action within a geographical region. But however, although the definition I've given you talks about geographical regions, it's also important to note that there are some regional organizations that are not purely formed as a basis of geography. So, for instance, you have the example of the League of Arab States, which essentially applies linguistic culture aspects as the basis for the inclusion of members rather than the geographical condition. So with regionalism, although what we are used to are the regional organizations that are in the same geographical region, there are instances where regional organizations will be formed based on various objectives if they have a common objective. For instance, if you even look at OPEC, that is the Organization of Petroleum Producing Countries, this is one example of regional organization that is not based on geography alone. Countries are in different locations, they're in different geographical locations, but they have one purpose of ensuring like the oil producing countries, their interests are protected. So they form a regional organization. You can also have a look at NATO. It's also an example of a regional organization that is not really based on the geographical location of the member states. So with regionalism, you need to have a common objective. In some instances, you'll find that the region organization, they are made up of countries that are in the same geographical location. For instance, the EU, European Union, you would know that it's mostly countries in the EU. Countries that are not in the EU, they cannot claim to be members of the EU. In West Africa, you look at ECOWAS. In East Africa, you look at the East African communities, the East African community, which has member countries within the East African region. In Southern Africa, you look at SADC, which has countries from the Southern Africa. So those are examples of regionalism within a regional, or a geographical region or location. But however, like the example given of the League of Arab States, NATO, OPEC, those are examples of some other regional organizations that are not entirely formed based on the regional geographical location of a country, but rather they are formed based on the common objectives. So what is the impact of history on regionalism? So historically, the notion of regionalism was influenced by various changes in the international system, including the Cold War and its ending, the post hegemonic era, and the processes of decolonization and globalization. So regionalism dates as far back as the 1950s and 1960s with the establishment of the Western Europe. And this is understood as the old regionalism, which was mostly influenced by the Cold War logic. So we note that regionalism is not a new thing. It dates back as far as the 1950s. But however, although the Western form of regionalism has been in the spotlight as a form of regionalism, we have to note that regionalism in various other continents besides Europe, it has been in existence for quite some time. And if you look at Africa, the sense for regionalism has been there even during the post-colonial era, whereby countries were looking at regionalism or regional or cooperation to ensure that they end colonialism in their countries. For instance, SADC, the Southern Development Community Secretariat, it's it's one of the examples where regionalism was really the main purpose for forming SADC was to end colonialism in different countries, Southern African countries. So regionalism has been there in different countries, in different continents, in different regions. But however, the EU or the Western regionalism has really been celebrated as being a benchmark for most of the regional organizations we are seeing today. And you also know that neo-regionalism has also been associated with the UN, and there is a general consensus that the success story of the EU integration has provided both the inspiration and normative model for the new wave of regionalism throughout the world. So regional blocs like the East African Community, ECOWAS, have been trying to imitate the EU model. But like we've mentioned, some regional organizations like the SADC, they've really been in existence for quite some time, and they had a different objective for forming that regional organization. So what is the basis of regional energy laws? The relevant legal provisions which are the basis for regional cooperation in the energy sector are illustrated in the establishing regional treaties. So before we even move to the regional energy laws, we have to first understand that there should be a basis for the regional energy laws. And in most cases, if you look at most of the regional organizations, they would have an establishing treaty. And that establishing treaty would have a provision that talks about cooperation among its member states in the development of the energy sector or the natural resources sector. So that establishing treaty would be the basis for formulating regional energy laws in different regional organizations. So the basis in summary are the establishing regional treaties. For instance, if you look at the Treaty for the Establishment of the East African Community of 1999, You notice that under Article 2, it establishes the East African Community, and the main objective is enshrined in Article 5.1, which states that the objectives of the community shall be to develop policies and programs aimed at widening and deepening cooperation among the partner states in political, economic, social, and cultural fields, research and technology for their mutual benefit. So the establishing treaty basically introduces the East African Community, and then it also illustrates the main purpose of the East African Community, and this is stated in Article 5, Clause 1. So regional energy law in East African Community. So with regard to the energy sector, the establishing treaty under Article 101 states as follows: the partner states shall adopt policies and mechanisms to promote the efficient exploitation, development, joint research, and utilization of various energy resources available within the region. So Article 101 further provides the different forms the partner states can cooperate in the energy sector, including the promotion of the least cost development and transmission of electric power, jointly plan and also train and also ensure capacity building in the energy sector. So when it comes to the East African Community, you note that under Article 101, it really talks about the need for regional cooperation in the development of the energy sector. So this will be the basis for the regional energy laws in the East African Community. Then if you look at regionalism in West Africa, we note that the Treaty of 28th May 1975 establishes the Economic Community of West African States, that is the ECOWAS. And then ECOWAS is established under Article 2 of the ECOWAS Treaty, and the main aim of the community is stipulated in Article 3, which states that the aims of the community are to provide cooperation and integration leading to the establishment of the economic union in West Africa. So with ECOWAS, also the establishing Treaty of 1975 under Article 3 really illustrates the main objective of ECOWAS as a regional organization. But however, it's also the basis for ECOWAS to establish the various regional energy laws and policies. Because if you want to cooperate in developing the ECOWAS region, then that means that you also have to cooperate in developing the energy sector through regionalism. So ECOWAS has a dedicated treaty or regional instrument that is focused on the energy sector, and that is their 2003 ECOWAS Energy Protocol, which was created with the main aim of promoting further cooperation in the energy sector among member states. So right now, I would like to invite you to look at the main provisions of the ECOWAS Energy Protocol and see how these provisions uh, are trying to encourage regional cooperation or regionalism in the energy sector. So that would be a thing to do. And then if you look at the EU, or at the European level, we have what we call the Energy Charter Treaty. Initially, this was the European Energy Charter. Initially, this was a European initiative, but however, with the globalization and internationalization, it became to be recognized as an international energy treaty. And the Energy Charter Treaty is one of the unique multilateral instruments in the energy sector. The origins of the Energy Charter Treaty need to be understood in the European countries' interest to trade with countries in the East following the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. So although initially it was a European initiative, it's got to extend through globalization to other countries outside the EU, including in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. So this is also a perfect example of regionalism in the energy sector, because initially it was an initiative of European countries, although it extended to other countries outside Europe. But you could see that regionalism has been in place for quite some time. Countries have understood that you can have energy resources, but You need to cooperate with neighboring countries. You need to cooperate with international partners. You need to cooperate with international investors for you to be able to develop and benefit from your energy resources. So that's why regionalism is very key, because at the end of the day, you can find a country that has like a lot of hydropower, but then the neighboring country doesn't have the same resources. So through regionalism, you can be able to cooperate. And for the countries that are rich in these resources, they can be able to cooperate with the countries that are deemed to be poor in the resources for them to be able to benefit through regionalism. So regionalism is a key thing in the energy sector. It's also very important when it comes to the establishment of energy infrastructure, like electricity transmission lines, uh, oil refineries, all the different energy infrastructure. We have the crude oil pipelines, gas pipelines. Most of these energy infrastructures are regional energy infrastructure, whereby although it can be constructed in one country or it crosses through other countries, the neighboring countries in that region can easily benefit from this energy infrastructure. So the Energy Charter Treaty, we can just look at it as an example. It's a legally binding text providing rules in the areas of investments, trade and transit, and energy efficiency. It provides dispute resolution mechanisms while explicitly recognizing and protecting national sovereignty over natural resources. The purpose of the ECT, or the Energy Charter Treaty, as provided for in its provisions, is promote cooperation in the energy field. So when you're talking about cooperation in the energy sector, you have to look at aspects of investment protection. You have to look at trade and transit, how a country is going to trade in the energy sector, how is trading in the electricity sector, and then transit. How can you ensure that you can benefit from the energy resources in one region? How can you ensure that the region and the infrastructures in the energy infrastructure in your country can benefit other countries? So that is the purpose of regionalism, to promote cooperation in the development of the energy sector. So if we look at the International Energy Charter, like I mentioned, initially the Energy Charter Treaty was an EU initiative, but then later on in 2015, it got to extend to other countries outside the EU, including the USA, China, Burundi, Uganda, Chad, ECOWAS, EAC. All these became parties or members of the International Energy Charter. So now we can move on to energy cooperation, because with regionalism in the energy sector, we notice that it's all about energy cooperation. It's all about countries cooperating with their neighbors to ensure that they develop the energy sector. So energy cooperation can be defined to be more concerned with the provision of energy services through improved management of international energy markets, wider availability and higher quality of energy resources, and the expansion of choices in order to achieve sustainable growth. It thus incorporates the notion of a reliable, ample supply of energy resources ranging from fossil fuels to renewables and nuclear energy. So with energy cooperation, in summary, it's more about cooperating in the development and management of the energy sector. And energy cooperation, it looks at the different types of energy, from fossil fuels, that is oil, gas, and coal, cooperation in the development of fossil fuels, to renewable energy, cooperation in the development of the different types of renewable energy, and also cooperation in the development of the nuclear power. Then what are the benefits of regional and international cooperation in the energy sector? So, like we've mentioned, regional cooperation is very key, especially in the energy sector, because it can lead to lower costs, lower energy costs, and then it can also lead to political trust. When countries are able to cooperate in the development of their energy sector, then there's that political trust. Economic development amongst the countries, the member countries in that region, it can lead to environmental improvements, because you can share the various standards on how to improve or even protect the environment. And then most importantly, it can lead to technological transfer among the member states. So there are various advantages associated with renewable energy, I mean with energy cooperation. So in your free time, have a look at the main provisions of the Energy Charter Treaty. Look at the provisions that relate to sovereignty over natural resources. Who owns the natural resources? Does it mean that just because there is regional cooperation or there are regional energy laws, that now a country has lost its sovereignty over natural resources? Can that be the case? And then what about issues of investment protection? What are the key main things when it comes to investment protection? And also dispute resolution. And there are some regional mechanisms on how they can resolve these energy disputes. And then also look at regional energy laws and see if regional energy laws are better than international energy laws. And then the challenges of the Energy Charter Treaty in the climate change era, because remember here we've talked about the Energy Charter Treaty, although it has various advantages, in recent years it has also been criticized. So it's an example of a regional or an international energy charter, an international energy law that has faced a lot of criticism in recent years due to the move to transition to low carbon economy and also the various moves to address climate change. And then why regionalism and globalism in the energy sector? So let's try to find out what is the purpose of regionalism and globalism in the energy sector. And for you to find out that, you have to look at the benefits of regionalism versus nationalism. What are the advantages of countries cooperating, or you think it's better for a country to just develop its own energy resources without cooperating with its neighbors? And then what are the benefits and but also what are the challenges of regional cooperation? And then for international energy laws, we don't have a lot of international energy laws, but however, the Energy Charter Treaty has been accepted as a multilateral or even an international special instrument in the energy sector. So we can look at the advantages of the Energy Charter Treaty and the disadvantages, whereby some countries have felt like they've been treated unfairly through the Energy Charter principles, especially with dispute resolution, protection of investment. So although regionalism has various advantages, it also presents challenges, especially where countries lose trust in a regional instrument, a regional energy instrument, or even an international energy instrument. So in this era, we have to really ask ourselves, how can we make regionalism work again? And for the countries that have been experiencing regionalism in the energy sector, how can they ensure that the member states in those regional organizations actually benefit from regionalism? Because remember, regionalism is not just about the energy laws, it's also about developing the regional energy infrastructure that can also help with the necessary finances we need to develop the various energy infrastructures. And then it's also about sharing technology. It's about investing in investment protection in the energy sector, and then also it's about energy markets. For countries that have surplus, you are assured of more market based outside your own country. So all those are the benefits of regionalism. But for it to work, we have to ensure that the establishing regional energy laws are effective, they're accepted by the different member states in the country, and also to ensure that no country is left behind because of regionalism. Because remember, with regionalism or regional cooperation, there are always countries in a region that are more powerful economically compared to other countries. So if regional organizations or regionalism is not monitored very well, you might find that the interests of smaller countries or smaller economies are left behind or are ignored because of regionalism. So regional cooperation has a lot of advantages, but it also has disadvantages, and we have to really look closely at how regional organizations and regionalism in the energy sector can create a positive impact for all the countries that are involved, be it big economies or even smaller economies. They should all have a level playing field on how they can be able to benefit from regionalism in the energy sector. Thank you very much. I'll see you next week.